This morning, I get the great pleasure of introducing one of the special people in my world. And the weekend practitioners and ministers, we joined with our esteemed guest speaker at the annual Mountaintop Retreat. And it was hosted by Sue Ruda at her beautiful home overlooking Lake Tahoe. Inspired us all before he even spoke. So you know how high we were all flying when we left. And the topic was soul, the sacred means of spirit. Reverend Dr. Lloyd Tupper's current ministry is to clarify and bring to life the teachings of many New Thought teachers, including the founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living, Ernest Holmes, as well as Thomas Troward and Raymond Charles Barker. So Dr. Lloyd first entered a religious science church, which we now call Centers for Spiritual Living, on Easter Sunday, 1967, as a recovering Catholic, as he likes to tell us. And he survived this adventure into greater possibilities started with much trepidation, he'll tell you about that, and became a Science of Mind minister in June of 1974. Since then, he has evolved as the Centers of Spiritual Living, as he held 4 pulpits, including founding CSL Golden Gate. He became the first president of the Holmes Institute of Graduate Studies, which is our School of Ministry, and the first president of the Science of Mind Foundation. Right? So he's been an important guy. Right? So he currently resides in his home on he currently resides in his home on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. But don't worry, Hurricane Leo only brought some light wind and rain to his home last night, so he's okay. Our prayer works. And he continues to serve as a practitioner and a minister, but mostly as a practitioner to ministers and practitioners throughout the world. So we're very grateful. So as you will hear this morning, Dr. Lloyd makes no pretense of being perfect. And instead he is a real-life spiritual being with a human experience and a loving life. So that is why he focuses on the basic foundations for a successful life. And his simple but important topic today is it's all in the daily practice. So it's my privilege to welcome Reverend Dr. Lloyd George Tupper, Jr.
Thank you. Well, good morning again to all of you. You all look so familiar to me. I think this young man over here to my left is the only person I don't know, but you are very welcome. And I feel like it's time to reflect on what Dr. Pam said, and to tell you that I'm still recovering from my Catholicism, but I also want to say, in due respect, as my mother reminded me at my ordination in 1982 when I was ordained, and that's my mother moving the cane, hitting me. Don't you forget, young man, I think I was 32, that your character was developed by the nuns. And so I've never forgotten that, and I do penance every day, part of my practice. But this morning I want to talk to you really about how easy it is when you've been in religious science for a while to slip and slide. Because as I have learned just recently through you, Michael, because yesterday as I was speaking, Michael was sitting at the table in front of me going like this on the computer. And of course, I don't claim to be computer literate. I can function on an iPad pretty well when I remember to plug it in and charge it. But I saw Michael doing all this typing, and everything he said, everything you said is now on this computer. Or I guess that's somewhat what you said. And I thought, I don't know if I could do that every day in my daily practice. However, it is important to realize that since I came into science of mind, religious science, back in 1967, it's a new world. It's a new world. And I never fail to realize it. Everything has changed. What we used to think of as a simple life seems to have become somewhat more complex. And in the course of that, I've noticed, as one of now the old timers, I'm now in my 85th year, that a lot of us older people, biologically speaking, and those that have been around a while are very spiritually lazy. That we think we know it all, and we probably do know it all because we've stored everything we've learned in our soul. Because the soul is the container of what we value, what we believe in, what we treasure. And it's also the container of all the experiences that we have in life that are primarily, prayerfully good, but also it contains some of the things in our life that we would rather not have repeated. And so as we get more familiar with the science of mind, it has been my experience that we get more, how can I put it, and still be welcomed here to speak. we just become more spiritually lazy. And what I've learned as I have biologically aged is I need more of this teaching than when I first came in back in 1967, because now I'm more complex. And as I said about the computer age, the internet age, and all of that stuff that we can now access by pushing a button on our computer, we can get information, we can pull up people, we can read their bios, it's all there. But where's the sweetness? Where's the sweetness of spirit? So I am emphasizing to the 12 people that I am privileged to be their practitioner. I figured Jesus had 12, I should have 12. Let's see, that works. And I don't have more than 12 because I can't do as good a job as I want to. Is Troward's treatment, which many of you I know have, and I think somebody took my, there it is. Here I am accusing people all the time, the Troward's treatment has been my guardian angel. And although I do know this by heart, I'm going to read it to make sure I don't leave anything out. And also, for all of you here, I think you all may have gotten a copy yesterday, except for the gentleman over here, who is welcome to have my copy if you'd like it before you leave. There is a treatment on the back, and it's the only treatment that Thomas Troward, who was a judge for 25 years in the Punjab in India, who made it his business to really study world religions. And he was one of the great, great intellectuals of that period, and still his work. If you've taken the basic training, which most of us have, if you've gone through becoming a practitioner, which I can look out here and see most of you are practitioners, and some of you, are ministers, such as our dear Dr. Marilyn Louise Leo, you know about Troward, and a lot of you have tried to read Troward. And you've come up against a block, some of us have anyhow. And so my saying to you, possibly, that you might consider doing Troward's treatment is something of a gift that I have gotten, and I want to share it with you. Because in these few words, Troward sets the tenor for where we grow into, as we grow into this familiarity of our work. in science of mind and how the mind works, he gets it simply down to the mind will work if you put the ingredients in it and allow it to become your practice for the day. So for me, every day, I sit down, and as I said, I can repeat this by memory, but I'll read it so I don't leave out a comma or a period. And he says, "My mind is the center of divine operation. The divine operation is always for expansion." See, right there. "And fuller expression. And this means the production of something beyond what has gone before. Something entirely new, not included in past experience, though proceeding out of it by an orderly sequence of growth. Therefore, since the divine cannot change its inherent nature, it must operate in the same manner in me, you." Where did I leave it off here? Same manner in me. "Consequently, in my own special world, this is your world now, of which I am the center, it will move forward to produce new conditions, always in advance of any that have gone before." So the question is, what has gone before? And this is where your daily practice comes in. Do you remember when we were all a bit younger, like maybe, except for maybe one or two of us, 40 or 50 years ago? And your mother, or at least my mother did, maybe your mother did too, or maybe she didn't. But my mother was Sicilian. And you know, cleanliness is next to godliness. I think my mother forgot the order, but anyhow, we always had to do what's called a spring cleaning, a summer cleaning, a fall cleaning, and a winter cleaning. And the whole idea was because even though we didn't have a lot of money, you could eat off our floors. Now that was her great, that's the thing that made her feel as a homemaker, as a mother, as a wife, she was succeeding in life. Well, what Troward is saying here is that if you're going to practice this science, you have to approach it somewhat like a scientist. And you have to say to yourself, what is it about my life that I would like to release? Everybody's got something or someone they want to release. So Troward sets you up to be able to do that, to identify whatever it is that has gone on before you sit, which I'll get to in a minute, in the morning, and you reflect. You reflect on what you want to let go and let God. Now, who amongst us doesn't have something against someone sometime? I'm being generous now. We all have issues with people. We have issues with ourselves. Self-loathing is very, very common. Most of us are practitioners and ministers. We know when people come to us that one of the biggest issues we have is self-loathing. That people feel they missed opportunities, they missed that person they should have married and didn't, and now they're not married, or they've remarried, still trying to find the person that they should have married or didn't marry, and all of those kind of things. And so they find themselves filled with confusion, discontent, dislike, and just basically unhappy. Now, to be a religious scientist and being unhappy is hell. I mean, they don't go together. So in my spiritual practice, which I still do, and I still read this every day, I come up with issues that I thought I no longer had to deal with. Because it's like a farmer. You know, you have to get out there on the tractor and you have to turn the soil and you have to then rake the soil and get the stones and all the leftover from the previous crop out of the field, and then you plant the good seed. But what most of us do is we plant the seed upon the old seed. And some people think the old seed provides the fertilizer for the new seed. And so you get this mixed bag. And you don't feel like you're ready for whatever the world throws at you. I do feel that way. Not because I'm special, but because I do believe in cleaning out my soul, so to speak, which is the seat of memory in us, and making sure that whatever I need to bless and release is thoroughly completed. So I go through this little practice. Believe me, it maybe in the beginning of a daily practice, you feel overwhelmed by all of it because there's a lot. You know, we've all lived a few years. That's a compliment. And so when we reflect on where we've been, what we've done, who we've married, who we got rid of, who we replaced them with, and all the kinds of things that average people live with, you realize that you have quite a list of things to do. Well, I have good news for you. You don't have to do more than 5 a day. And you will be amazed when you do take 5 issues that continuously show up in your life and you address them like a Sicilian cleaning her house. You will just take the situation, the memory that comes to you, use what Troad has said to start it with, and then do whatever it feels right to do to bless that condition, to release that condition, and to simply say, I return you to your native no-thingness, nothingness. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself because I could do that very easily, but I will tell you this. Soul stuff is what makes conditions. Soul stuff is the substance of everything that becomes form. So when we think of the universe, and we think, how did the universe produce a form like Michael or Reverend Pam? They came out of what's called soul stuff, out of the self-contemplation of spirit, which is what we do when we read this, we self-contemplate. And out of that contemplation, a prototype of itself, of spirit, came into being. And out of that contemplation comes what we call the likeness of God. Thou art made in the image and likeness of God. So if something comes up, which it does, by the way, that is not of the likeness of God, then dissolve it. Because again, it's made out of soul stuff. But soul stuff cannot take the initiative to eliminate a condition in your life. You have to do that. Now, in Catholicism, for those of us who are recovering, confession was introduced. And that was a very symbolic, good thing back in the day. When you went into a confession, you said the Confiteor, which is, I confess to you, to Almighty God and to you, Father, or whatever, and I don't want to bring that up too much. But I spent a lot of time in confessionals when I was younger. But that was a good practice. But they didn't tell you about why a confessional that you might go to every week before Sunday so you could go to Mass, because you couldn't receive Holy Communion if you had a mortal sin. Because if you had a mortal sin, you went straight to hell. Now, a venial sin, you could get maybe 500 years in purgatory. I got 5,000 years in purgatory when I was in the 3rd grade because I pulled when they used to put pigtails on girls when they're little. Well, this girl sat in front of me, Helena Antonucci. Her father was a celery lady, manufacturer or something, some farm product in Boston. And I used to think she was like a horse. I could pull her braids and pull her this way or pull her that way. So Sister Bonaventure said to me, and I had done it quite regularly, sort of like I'm telling you to read this treatment, that I was going to purgatory for 5,000 years. And do you know that stayed with me practically all my life? And I thought, well, now where would I be in those 5,000 years at this point? And so I guess it served its purpose. It got into my subjective mind, the soul, and I still remember it, which helps me because I don't want to get too holy. I don't want to think, oh, well, I'm above the fray, or I have nothing to confess, so to speak, or I don't make mistakes anymore. Ernest Holmes says there are no mistakes, but they are lessons. When we make a so-called mistake, we call it a lesson. What do we do with it? How do we handle it? Daily practice, daily practice. And everybody that I've ever worked with, not everybody, but I've had to twist their arm, so to speak, to sit in the morning. And they say, oh no, I love to do my prayers at night. Well, I say, well, they won't work because you're too tired, or you've had a martini, or a couple of beers, or you've eaten dinner and you're lethargic. So Spirit doesn't want to have romance with you at night. Spirit wants you in the morning. That's why the Buddhists meditate at 4 a.m. When I lived in Japan back in the 80s, I went to a Buddhist monastery, and I remember at 4 a.m. all these Buddhist students, chanting and carrying on, and I thought, my God, when do they sleep? When do they shut up? But that's really the best time. Where you live, all the energy and all is at its lowest point. And you get up, not at 4 a.m. I don't get up at 4 a.m. I get up at 7 a.m. And the first thing I do is, of course, make a cup of coffee and an offering to God with my coffee. And I go and I sit down and I start with this. And just the fact that I am putting this kind of information in my conscious awareness again, and I wait till I have finished it, then I close my eyes, and I just sit there, maybe for 10 or 15 minutes. It's not like laborious. It's not an hour or 2 hours, because if you've been doing it a while, those thoughts about you need to clean this up, it's called karma in the East. The karmic condition. And Jack Kornfield, if you're familiar with him, he started Spirit Rock and has written many books on Buddhism, great Buddhist, always says the definition of karma is you get away with nothing. Get away with nothing. So I'm always familiar that when I do that little practice and I say this treatment, I wait for what I thought I got away with. And I've totally forgotten it. But things do come to my conscious awareness. And all I do is I bless them. I regret that I may have caused somebody pain or sorrow or sadness, or I bumped somebody out of a position that they should have had, but I was smarter than them to get it, or whatever. I like to keep myself in that state. Now, this morning, I did the same thing. I was talking with Dr. Marilyn. I said, I'd like to go outside now and sit in the chair and look at the lake. And was I out there 15 minutes? You don't know. Well, didn't I tell you what to say this morning? But I went and sat outside and I just said this prayer by memory, of course, and two or three things came up. One of them was you, Dr. Pam. I've just promoted you, by the way. You know, I thought I didn't give her enough time to talk to me. Little things, just little things. They're not mortal sins, so called, but they're little things that make me want to be better at what I am supposedly doing in the world. But once I get the slate cleaned, like I did, sitting there in that 15 minutes, I can get up, come to this wonderful chapel, and think I have something worthy to talk to you about. And if I didn't do that, I would be a fraud. That's how I see it. A fraud in life, going around thinking I'm doing good because I'm a minister, I'm ordained, and I'm now biologically an elder. Isn't that an awful word? An elder in the movement. And I don't need to do what I say I should do. So I'm going to close. I don't want to make anybody guilty, but I want to say this last thing. We all have so-called sins against our nature. Our nature. And if you believe you're the temple of the living presence, which we all are, and that we are the likeness of God personified in a human form temporarily before we pass forward, then clean up your act. And in so doing, you will find that you evolve a relationship with the Spirit that passeth all understanding. It just is with you. You talk to it when you're driving. You talk to it when you're in the bathtub or showering. You talk to it when you wake up at 4:10 in the morning. You talk to it because it's your friend. You have no stuff hidden, no anger, no resentment, no vengeance, no anything that is the opposite of its nature. So I suggest to you, obviously, you're all pretty well schooled in this thought, don't get to the point that you don't think you need a daily cleansing, because we all do. We absorb the race thought, meaning the average thinking of all humans across the planet is in what Jung called the collective consciousness of humanity. And those predominant thoughts of humanity are suggestions that come into our consciousness. Believe me, they do come in. And you are the only one that can get rid of them. Now, I know we have a therapist in our group. And I said yesterday, a therapist might say, well, you need a catharsis. And that is to bring the truth forward. Because once the truth is shown, it disappears and returns to whatever the native nothingness of that situation was. But if you ignore it, it compounds interest. And then it eventually can make you ill physically, uncomfortable mentally. You stop believing in your immortality. You start thinking of when you're going to so-called die, which is a sin to even think about, by the way. Because guess what, kids? Dying is not going to get you out of this. So that's everybody's big one, you know. No. First of all, you'll never die because you are immortal now. Your body will go back to the earth from whence it came, but you will go forward. So go forward with a clean slate. And you don't have to go to the Himalayas. You don't have to bathe in the Ganges in September on the 28th when the moon is full. I did that once and my butt fell off. So don't you don't have to do what the Beatles did and go see the Maharishi. I mean, I don't even know if he's still with us, is he? No. See, I did remember you. Anyhow, get it cleaned up. Keep it simple. Don't don't make it complicated. Stop nailing yourself daily to a cross and resurrect. And be happy. Be fulfilled. Set the law of attraction into place because you're so damn sweet and you're nice and people want to be around you. And you feel good when you put your head to the pillow at night. And there's no fear of anything. You're always ready to step over if that's your choice. And you're always have unloaded that pack of all the do's and do nots that you have. And you ease into sleep refreshed and open and receptive to the divine impartation that is uniquely for you in the next dawn. And so it is, and so it shall be. Thank you. Okay.